BORTLE here, back from the epic case tournament post Dawn of Majesty. That's right, folks. We have here the winner of this event, Aaron McInnes. Welcome to the channel, man.
How's it going? Long time no see.
That's true. That's true, man. This is just all over the place. It looks like it's some type of rank 3 spam. Oh man, it's wild. What made you decide to play this post Dawn of Majesty, man?
So the set, from my perspective, didn't change much. Ready Fusion's a nice addition to the deck, but overall, I was just like pretty tired with like how everything had been going with Tri Brigade and Prank Kids. I felt like this deck had a really strong Tri Brigade matchup, and I was able to tune it all for what I expected to be in the meta.
Were there any notable matchups during this event? Like, did anyone give you a hard time?
I lost to a Eldritch Live Twin deck in the last round of Swiss, so, but we were both 5-0, so it didn't matter. But yeah, that deck, it like this deck is interesting into other mid-range decks. I think I would have to adjust it a little bit more if I was expecting less combo, which is like the Prank Kids and the Tri Brigade. So it's all just dependent on the meta, and this is like the benefit of a deck that has like 15 to 18 slots that you can adjust.
Before we start the actual deck profile of this video, would you like to do some shoutouts?
Yeah, shout out Epic Cards and Games, obviously, great event. They're my sponsor still after all this time. And then shout out to WAF for the theory and all the testing prior.
Beautiful. Without further ado, please take over with the rest of the deck profile, man.
Sure. So we've got the Torn Scales, Tour Guide, and Rhoda for the normal summons. So that's the 7 best cards. If you open one of these, you're in a really strong spot, because even if you get hand trapped, you've got a bunch of extenders that allow you to keep going. We've got a wide variety of extenders. We've got Junk Forward, Kagemusha Knight, we've got Psychic Tracker and Wielder, Dangers, and then the Ready Fusions and E-Telly. So any combination of those along with your plays guarantee you to end on the end board, which I can go over at the end. From there, we've got the Phantom Knight cards, which are 2 Ancient Cloak, Gloves, and Boots. You need a 2 Cloak, that way you have access to Boots post turn 1, because you don't always get the Levier in this version, which I chose to not do the Utopic Fusion version. I can go over that a little bit towards the end. So yeah, it's all the monsters. We've got Graf Seer and Skarm. I like the Skarm a lot more than Libic. Libic never really provided anything from my perspective. And Skarm guarantees you follow-up. It either gets you a discard for Dragoon in Seer, which on their turn you can either Seer for Cherubini for the next turn, or you can just Seer for Skarm and then Skarm for Tour Guide, so you just always have the Tour Guide as your normal summon the next turn. So yeah, that's all the main monsters. We've got Phantasme and Ash for the hand traps. My biggest concern going into the event was how to counter both Tri Brigade and Prank Kids, which I expected to be the most played decks. And I couldn't find hand traps that were strong enough against both. Valor and Imperm obviously very strong against Tri Brigade, but I felt like this deck already had a decent matchup. So I was looking at cards like Bell, and Bell just didn't provide what I'd wanted to against most of the decks. So I just committed to the 3 Chalice and 3 Droplets in the main deck, which worked out really well. It's just super versatile. Even though you have Fogblade, like obviously going second, you can't just activate that blind. So just the ability for Phantasma to draw into cards that are like you can activate like in response to it, because if you play Phantasma, you can't use Imperm, you can't use Gamma, any of those strong cards. So just having the versatility of those spells is really nice. From there, we got the Call by the Grave, just obviously you help protect your plays. And then we got the Dragoon package. This was what kind of pushed this deck over the edge for me. I just think it's so versatile. Like I said, so you can do like the Utopic Dragon package, you could do you can end on like Appaloosa with IP. Like there's so many different endboards this deck can do. But I just figured that if you have Dragoon in your deck, like you're always guaranteed something. If they Nibiru you, it's really consistent that you're able to get another monster on board and end up with the Verte. So even if they like try and stop you, you're gonna always have the Dragoon plus generally a Fogblade. And that's enough for most, that's too much for most decks to handle, especially when you're out the Nibiru with Dragoon. So it just puts a lot of pressure on decks. Dragoon's just such a broken card, and this deck takes advantage of that to the fullest. And from there, we've got 3 Gozen match. This card is extremely strong right now into Prank Kids and Tri Brigade, like I've been talking about. I expect those to be the most played decks. Going first and going second, as long as you bait out the Shurik, they can't really out the Gozen game 1. And post side, like, even then, like, they have to draw an out to it. And if not, like, ideally your engine helps you play through their board. And then from there, we've got the 3 Blockblade. For a while, I was playing a 4th name, which was the Sword. But it just ended up not being as relevant as I initially thought, especially with all the extenders that I'm playing now. And then the 1 Shade, which helps you get to redo the trap under it. Makes that, it slims down the extra deck by playing that, just so you only have to play 1 rank 4, because if you don't, you'd want to play something else that's better, because if you only have 2 monsters in the redoer, it's really not that strong. From there, we'll go into the extra deck. We've got Flame Ghost as the Ready Fusion target. and then obviously Dragoon, which I've been talking so much about. We've got Zeus and Downard for the going second, just clear boards. Zeus is so broken, and the fact that this deck gets to use that and Dragoon, it just makes it even stronger. Two break swords, super strong card, going first, going second. Um, yeah, not much more to say. I think this card just extremely strong, and just the ability to like pop your own fog blades going second and use them as extenders, and then just like having the spot removal is really nice. We've got the one Levier for recursion. Ideally, you get to use it going first and then go into Verte and just like have that follow up engrave. But it's not as important in this version just because we play the two cloak. We've got the Torrent Scales coming back, obviously. And I'm willing to like let some cards get banished to make sure I have my full board because I also have the Scarm Search as well, so it's not as relevant in some of the other versions. And then obviously the Redoer, which is just super strong interaction versus Prank Kids. If you hit their normal, they can't play the game. And even if they chain a fusion to it, you still just shuffle back the fusion, and then from there, like you have other interactions. And then we've got the Access Code. We've got the Cherubinius card, super strong. If you open Tour Guide, you just send gloves. That way you have the versatility of sending either a trap or cloak or scales. And then if you don't open it, obviously you send Graph and you summon Scarm off of it. That way you have the follow up for the next turn. And then we've got the IP. This one doesn't come up too much, but some matchups you'd like to make that instead of having the Redoer. I really wanted to fit Appaloosa in the extra deck, but unfortunately that was the 16th card that I had to cut last minute. So there's a chance that IP doesn't make it in the future, but I also think having a generic Dark Link is really nice. Sometimes you just have to clear board and like make it with like a tracker or something so you can go into shade in weird lines. So I think it's probably worthwhile for a Dark Link, even if I don't get to use the effect as much as I would like. And then from there we've got the Unicorn, just spot removal, links up into Access Code. Link Spider, it's mainly for the Nibiru token. And then also sometimes you need to use Shade as an effect monster for Verte. And then obviously we got the Verte and the Shade, the Rusty Bardiche, which is a super strong card. Really happy this card's back. It just does so much for the deck. And then in the side deck we've got 3 Cycle Reader. I didn't play any Drytron this weekend. I kind of wish that this was something like Droll and Lockbird, just so it had a little bit more coverage against something like Dragon Link, which I've seen rise in popularity. And then also stuff like Shaddoll and random decks that it hits. Cycle Reader is like definitely the best hand trap against Drytron, but if it's not played enough for me to justify it, then I just need to look at more versatile options. From there, I've got 3 Bell. Hits Drytron, hits Eldritch, hits Shaddolls, Prank Kids. It just hits so many matchups in the meta, and you can't really ask for much more, but I don't think it's good enough in the main just because of Appaloosa's negate on Revolt. And then also there's like some other matchups where it's not as prevalent in like Dragon Link. We've got Pankratops, Duster, Reboots. These were initially Lightning Storms, but with Phantasme going into the main deck, I figured that having something like that to draw into wouldn't be as strong, since they're all cards that I can just activate off the draw of Phantasme. Pankratops is a super strong card, obviously, breaks a lot of boards, creates a lot of problems for decks. And then Duster Reboot just for all the back row. And from there we have 3 Tactics. Just the main going first card. If goes instead in a matchup or I want to take out Chalice, that's what it goes in. It was in the main initially, but I decided to put the Chalice in over it just because if they have Revolt set, Chalice guarantees that they have to have other interactions, and Tactics you have to like get lucky off of the draw, and I really just wanted to try and guarantee my plays result as much as possible. And then from there we got 3 Twin Twister just to round out some more backer removal. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so my generic end board was Rusty Bardiche. Generally you had a Break Sword in Graveyard, which was popped off of the Bardiche, which set up a Redoer, and then also a Dragoon with Verte, and then at least 1 Fogblade, ideally 2, and then a hand trap or anything like that.
That's a pretty nutty board, man. It's like at least 4 monsters there. You are playing 50 cards in the main deck. Were you ever tempted to like max it out and play the 60 to like not open your Red Eyes fodder or Dragoon fodder?
I think I didn't do like too much math on this, but I felt like 50 was a good number because I didn't want to draw red eye stuff like you mentioned, and then also drawing the Burning Abyss cards is really unfortunate. But at the same time, I really wanted to see Torn Scales and Tour Guide because there like isn't a normal summon that's anywhere near as good as them, and then also I wanted to see like Chalice and Droplet. There are enough extenders to play 60 and still have access to Cherubini as consistently, but like the power cards that you play as well, there aren't enough of those for me to justify bumping it up even more. Because at that point, I'm just like trying to draw 2 level 3s and then not get hand trapped. From here, like if I draw my normal summon, if it doesn't get hand trapped, I automatically end full board, and if it does, I'll only need just 1 extender to end full board.
And you did mention that you wanted to open one of your 7, which were Scales, Tour Guide, or Rhoda. Were there any games where you were just unfortunate in not opening those?
Oh yeah, like that definitely happened. In those spots, I just ideally had like a level 3 and an extender. There was definitely a game where I summoned Ash along with like a junk forward to try and make plays happen. But yeah, obviously like that's unfortunate, but you got to do what you can. That's why the Phantasma's in there as well to help going second to try and resolve everything. I just try to maximize the consistency of the deck while at the same time minimizing the bricks. There's probably some changes that could be made, but I think for a first-ish draft, I think it's really strong. The main thing I would do is just cut like the second Concamution Knight for an instant fusion, and then from there, there's probably some other small changes, but other overall, I think it performed rather well.
Oh yeah, well yeah, of course, man. You won this whole case tournament, and 50 plus players, and also you're utilizing Ready Fusion, which just came out of like Dawn of Majesty, so that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, the card performed really well. There's just some weird spots where the monster summon not being an effect monster obviously makes going into Verte rather weird. The main thing is like with Revolt in the format, you want to try and hold those types of extenders for later. That way, like you can go that into a level 3. Because it's not an effect monster, sometimes it can get weird into where you can't make Verte with it later. So it's actually a little bit more difficult than it looks, just like sequencing everything, and that just comes with practice with the deck. Because I definitely am nowhere near as proficient as I would like to be.
Perfect, and thank you for explaining and running down this deck, man. And hopefully we'll see you again in the future.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And listeners, if you're not a part of Bortle Nation, sub for Bortle. It's that easy and it's free. Oh God, yes. Bortle out.